Now let us discuss the topic, what is grammar. Okay, the word grammar means different things to different people. Okay, the word grammar means different things to different people. That means the concept of word grammar, the concept of the word grammar is different for different people. To the ordinary citizen, it connotes correct or incorrect English. To the ordinary people, to the common people, it means correct English or incorrect English. It means the correct use of the language or the incorrect use of the language. To a school student, it means an analytical and terminological study of sentences. To a school student, it means the analysis and the terminology relating to the sentences. To a school student, it means the analysis and terminology relating to the sentences. To a linguist, it means the total set of signals by which a given language expresses meaning, or the total structure of a language. To a linguist, okay, grammar means the totality of signals, the totality of the signals through which a language expresses its meaning, or the total structure of the language. Okay, the word grammar is used in a number of ways, as we have discussed already. It may refer to a book, in which case a grammar is analogous to a dictionary. Okay, grammar is nothing but a book. Okay, and in the sense of a book, grammar is comparable to a dictionary. And just as we have many English dictionaries which vary in the number of their entries and the quality of their definitions, so we have many English grammars or grammar books which vary in their coverage and their accuracy. So we have different English dictionaries, and different English dictionaries have different number of words and different definitions of words. Similarly, English grammars have, different English grammars have different coverages. That means the number of contents are different from one grammar book to another grammar book. So depending on the grammar book, the number of contents are different and their accuracy is also different. Next, here we have to mention about two famous grammar books, very noted grammar books. These are number one is Modern English Grammar on Historical Principles. This is a very reputed English grammar book, and it has 7 volumes. Okay, it's a huge grammar, and it was published between 1909 and 1949. Okay, another English grammar book that we have to mention is Comprehensive Grammar of the English Language, which was published in 1985, right? And this grammar book has around 1800 pages, so you can guess that it's a very huge grammar book. So now there are so many reputed contemporary grammar books also. I'd like to mention some other names, like High School English Grammar of Grammar and Composition by Wren and Martin, A Practical English Grammar by Thompson and Martinet, A Remedial English Grammar for Foreign Students by F.T. Wood. So these are also very reputed and frequently used grammars in the present day. Okay, now in the concrete sense of the word grammar, a grammar is a book of one or more volumes. So grammar, if we come to the definition of grammar, then we can simply state that grammar is a book, okay, that has one or more volumes. So now let us talk about two types of grammar. That is, one is reference grammar and pedagogical grammar. Okay, like a dictionary, a reference grammar is intended for individual consultation. Okay, it is not expected to be read or studied from beginning to end. Some reference grammars resemble dictionaries closely in being organized alphabetically rather than as is usual thematically. So a reference grammar is intended for individual consultation. It is not expected to be read or studied from beginning to end. Usually, it can be thought that the grammar book should be read from the beginning to the end. But reference grammar should be read for only for individual consultation. If a person has some specific need, okay, with respect to the knowledge of grammar, if a student wants to know a specific aspect of grammar, then the student can directly refer to that particular page in the reference grammar, where he or she can find what she wants to know, right? So that is reference grammar. It is like a dictionary. Just as dictionaries are organized alphabetically, reference grammars are also organized alphabetically. So the student or the person can directly locate the content of the grammar in the reference grammar. Okay. Now, pedagogical grammars, on the other hand, are textbooks chiefly intended for class use under the guidance of a teacher. So, pedagogical grammars are nothing but textbooks that are intended for for class use, that is used in the class under the guidance of the teacher. Okay, the material in pedagogical grammars is graded according to the level and ability of the expected users, and is generally prescribed in sections that can reasonably be absorbed within a class period. Okay, and pedagogical grammars are graded, and it is written according to pedagogical grammar is written according to the level of the students. This is graded according to the level of the students' understanding, or the students' level of their course. Okay, course of study. Okay, now let us come to sorry let us come to other two types of grammar. One is prescriptive grammar, another is descriptive grammar. So there are two types of grammar: prescriptive grammar and descriptive grammar. Prescriptive grammar is the old traditional type of grammar that prescribes rules for the use of the language. It tries to perform the legislative function for the language so that any departure from the rules is not allowed. Here the grammarians go wrong because they forget that language is ever changing and ever growing. So prescriptive grammar is the old traditional type of grammar that prescribes rules for the use of the language. So prescriptive grammar is nothing but the grammar that gives some rules. Okay, that gives some rules for the use of the language. Prescriptive grammar, okay, gives some rules for the use of the language, and prescriptive grammar does not allow any deviation or departure from the rules. That means there is a fixed set of rules, and the users are expected to follow the rules. There should not be any deviation or departure from the rules of prescriptive grammar. Okay, here the grammarians go wrong because they forget that language is ever changing and ever growing. Okay, the grammarians of prescriptive grammar, actually they are wrong because they forget that language is ever changing and ever, since language is dynamic, right? Language is changing every day, every day. The kind of language that was used, say, the 200 years ago is not used today. Okay, if we talk about the language that was used by Geoffrey Chaucer, who was the father of English poetry, okay, that kind of language is not used today. Today's English is different from the English used by Geoffrey Chaucer in the 14th century, right? So continuously, the English language, like other languages, are changing. It's a living language. English language is not a dead language, it's a living language. So since language is ever changing and ever growing, so giving a set of rules for the use of language is not acceptable, right? It is not acceptable because prescriptive grammar gives a fixed set of rules, and the users of the language are expected to follow these rules, right? So it is the prescriptive grammar is the old traditional type of grammar that gives rules, fixed set of rules for the use of the language. Next comes descriptive grammar. So descriptive grammar describes the behavior of the language, the way the language is actually used by the native speakers. Okay, descriptive grammar describes the behavior of the language, the way the language is actually used by the native speakers, right? It takes into account the fact that language is growing, and any change in the usage is to be taken note of. So descriptive grammar describes the behavior of the language, and it is the way the language is actually used by the native speaker, right? Descriptive grammar is related to the way the language is used by the native speakers, right? If the language use changes, descriptive grammar also changes, right? Descriptive grammar does not give any fixed set of rules. It is descriptive grammar is dynamic, right? Descriptive grammar changes depending on the change of the language. Since language is ever changing and ever growing, so descriptive grammar also changes depending on the use of the language in different times, right? So suppose the kind of grammar that was descriptive grammar that was used, that was used, or that was that was recommended, say 10 years back. If the language has use has changed, descriptive grammar will also change. So descriptive grammar is acceptable to descriptive grammar welcomes change in the language, and rules of descriptive grammar also change depending on the change in the language, right? So descriptive grammar too becomes prescriptive in a sense that it has its own rules, but the only difference between it and the prescriptive grammar is that, unlike prescriptive grammar which shuts its doors against any new uses, descriptive grammar takes note of it. Okay, so descriptive grammar accepts changes in the language, and accordingly it also change rules, right? Rules of grammar. So it is recommended that in schools we should teach descriptive grammar instead of prescriptive grammar. So let us finish our discussion here on the topic, what is grammar. I hope this you know you know teaching on the definition of grammar, what is grammar, and what is descriptive grammar, what is prescriptive grammar, right? And what is pedagogical grammar, what is reference grammar. You have been able to understand these things, different types of grammar or the definition of grammar from this video. I hope this will be useful for you. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and cooperation. Thank you.